with the fact that the world of middlemen extracting rents is ending and service provision is going to come to the fore. That is what peer-to-peer direct connection is all about. And in my analysis, I think we're making a transition to a new phase, and I'm hugely optimistic of this, that we went from a society for thousands of years, I call Market 1.0, the first version, which was decentralized but disconnected. So the market price of corn in Romford was not the market price in Ilford, was not the market price anywhere else. It was decentralized but disconnected. Now we're at the zenith, in fact we're beyond the zenith, we're on the way down, of Market 2.0, which is centralized but connected, full of single points of failure, too big to fail. Except they did fail, didn't they? And we're keeping these zombie banks and financial institutions pumped up with QE, and they're still walking, but their heads have been cut off. The question is, what comes next? I believe that the next generation of markets will be decentralized but connected. Market 3.0 is what and it will look Napster-ish, okay? It will be directly connected. Now, where we are lacking, in my opinion, is in the legal tools to enable this. That's what's been holding us back. We're used, you see, to certain absolutes. It's either or, either public, well, we mean states by that, don't we? Or private, well, typically that's PLC. So between citizens comes either the state as a middleman, disempowering us, or the shareholder standing between us and extracting a profit. And we take this for granted. It's either or. And also, we take for granted certain forms of finance. It's either equity, well, there's nothing equitable about equity in a PLC at all. It's either equity or it's debt. And these are conflicting claims over the same productive assets, and we take for granted that that is all that there is. Well, I beg to differ. I've been, while everybody else seems to have been looking at credit derivatives, credit and debt and all these exotica which have brought the financial system to its knees, I've been observing developments in the world of equity, real equity. In Canada, income trusts, basically using trust law to take productive assets and allow investment directly in productive assets. Real estate investment trusts, forms of partnerships. I'm afraid I'm really sad. I'm actually interested in these legal forms. Most people just glaze over when I mention them, but I'm actually interested in them, and I got Norwegian funding to develop some thinking in relation to this. And in Scotland, you see, we have guilty, not guilty, and not proven. So it's not a question of either or. We're seeing the emergence of new partnership-based structures using in the UK, things called LLPs, which I'm one of the few sad people interested in LLPs. In the States, they use things called LLCs, and these open up new mechanisms for investment, new mechanisms for credit, which are not the ones which we take for granted. Glasgow now has 5 municipal partnerships, for instance. Nobody seems interested in that except me, which is sad to say. But it opens up the possibilities of new ways of actually investing, of financing, and of funding. Now, I'll give you a couple of examples. I'll try and keep it as simple as possible. 8 years ago, the Hilton Group wanted to raise £350 million on the back of 10 UK hotels, which they have. And traditionally, they could have borrowed a mortgage. Who here does not understand what a mortgage is? So they could have mortgaged, or they could have been more exotic and done a sale and lease back. You sell the freehold, you lease it back. So instead of paying a mortgage, you pay a rent. But in both cases, if aeroplanes fly into large buildings and the hotel business has a disaster, which is what happened, then you find yourself losing your hotels. So what the Hilton Group did was they put the hotels into a partnership. They found investors on the basis that the investors would share the revenues from the hotels, and so they've given away some of the upside. In a good year, the financiers have a good year. In a bad year, the financiers have a bad year. They entered into what I call a capital partnership, but what I understand Islamic financiers have a different name for. And they did it because it worked. And I was one of the few people who actually thought, this is interesting. This is the use of a partnership vehicle for sharing risk and reward in new ways. And I have been busily working on developing these models, looking at direct investment in productive assets, so that, for instance, you could actually make loans, if you will, without a date, undated credit, I call it, directly into productive assets such as land, such as a wind turbine, funding a film by bringing in, I set up a film, all the actors became members of the film, I was a member of the film, the producer was a member of the film, and we brought in a couple of capital partners, as I call them, to actually put in the money that got the film made, and they got a percentage. They didn't get shares of £1 each, they got umps, okay? We're talking about the potential to reinvent equity. And I'm just watching what people are doing with a simple but radical new legal form. And before Christmas, I've given evidence to the Scottish Parliament on energy financing using this, because if you think about it, a wind turbine actually plucks. If you own a wind turbine, you can take £50 notes out of the fresh air. That's what you're doing. And if you're actually able to sell that production forward, well, I was a director of an energy futures exchange. I understand what selling forward is all about. If you can actually sell a unit, redeemable in payment for 10 kilowatt hours, I have one in my pocket if anybody would like to see one, well, in that case, you are literally monetizing the future flow of energy. And if you sell the production of maybe 30 to 40% of the average wind turbine, you have enough money to build the thing. Well, I'm sorry, this is just, where's the debt? Well, it's debt, but it's denominated in energy. It's units redeemable in payment for energy. It's not credit created out of nothing by banks with interest attached. It is possible simply to sell forward the fruit of the land. 2/3 of debt, 2/3 of our money actually in creation today. Where did it come from? It was created by banks in mortgage loans. What secures mortgage loans? Land. So in fact, 2/3 of our money is land backed. But we don't even think about that. We just think that somehow the banks have actually produced something of value, when in fact they haven't. They've just monetized the actual rental value of the land. Before Christmas, I made a presentation to the top 20 UK housing associations as to how they can actually, I saw another one this morning, as to how they can actually fund their long-term rental, their long-term property obligations, simply by a new form of equity, creating equity within a partnership. Okay? Just think what it does to the finances of a housing association, of a hospital, of a school, of a government, if they don't have debt, if they don't pay compound interest, if they pay a reasonable return from the fruits of productive assets. That is not just possible, it is happening as we speak. I'm just sad enough to be watching people do it. Everybody else is actually looking back at, well, it has to be this way. Well, Joni Mitchell sang a song years ago called Big Yellow Taxi, and I'm old enough to remember it. She said, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And I'm saying you don't know what you haven't got until you see it. These partnership-based vehicles are simple, they're radical, they allow new things to be done, and I've been in and out of Iran as well, at top level, right up to the president, and the foreign office here are not interested in talking to anybody who's actually been to see the people in power over there. It's quite extraordinary. But while I was there, I actually went to see one of the top, he's the top person in COM on the subject of partnership finance. And I asked him his opinion as to whether it was Sharia compliant. And he said, well, you don't have to ask me, he said. He said, it's self-evident. Any Muslim will tell you that because I showed him a diagram, any Muslim will tell you that that is Islamic finance. In fact, the second time I actually made a presentation on this subject, a man in the audience stood up and said, Mr. Cook, you do realise that that is musharaka, don't you? Which, I'm sorry, I thought that was a curry at that point. But I now know better. And the point I'm getting to is that I believe that ethical is in fact optimal. I did not know that these structures were. I knew they were risk sharing. I knew that they work in practice because my business has always been to actually develop financial products that work. That's what I was, I think, reasonably good at. And I believe that there is an opportunity now to completely refund and refinance existing debt with a one-off, I call it a debt equity swap. And the reason we'll be able to do this is we can cut, the middleman will be cut out, and the middleman will be glad to be cut out. Because what is it banks are short of at the moment? Capital. Banks will be quite happy, I believe, to migrate to become service providers, adding value, instead of middlemen, extracting it as that. So the outcomes of a partnership society, a networked market 3.0, are that it will be in people's interest to collaborate rather than to compete, because they'll make more if they do. Would you rather have 10% of something or 100% of nothing? Well, it's a simple question and a simple answer. We'll move from, there are no profits in a partnership. There is no middleman taking profit out of a partnership. Dr. Yunus calls it not for loss. He talks about social business. That is the future, social business. The future is not of organisations. What I'm describing here of a capital partnership, it doesn't own anything, it doesn't do anything, it doesn't employ anyone, it doesn't contract with anyone. It's just an agreement within which people will self-organise to a common purpose. That is the business of the future. And it basically enables us to encapsulate what I have heard called the cooperative advantage. The cooperative movement love to think that they have the cooperative advantage, which is the freedom from paying returns to shareholders. Technically, they should be able to undercut any shareholder value entity because they're not paying shareholders, but they've been held back for 150 years by the fact that they've used genetically modified companies. You can't, it just doesn't work. So, to sum up, finally, I believe it is possible to literally rebase money. What is the basis of money of credit? Well, it's me, and the time is you. It's our expertise, it's our time, it's our sweat if we work hard. The basis of what we provide, this is the unsecured credit. This is it's quite possible to create what we call a credit clearing system in Switzerland. They have one. I've been advising the Central Bank of Ecuador on a very interesting project they're doing there. Actually basing it on the value of goods and services that individuals create. Visa, who here hasn't got a Visa card, most of us do. There is credit necessary to create goods and services. The second form of credit, is based on productive assets, and I believe that in a new way, it's one of the digital revolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, well, quite a session. We